what are your thoughts? How did Walz do? How did Vance do?
Yeah, so honestly, I think in this debate, there were some very powerful questions that really required that they dig into and put their hands in where they stand on the issue. So I definitely think that I give a shout out to the people that put together the questions, the thoughtfulness of that, because they really had to go in and navigate. We heard them in the nuances, or the candidates that chose to go into the nuance. But I think that I think in the beginning, J.D. Vance had a posture of showing that he was, that he had some thoughts. He was a leader, and he was, being able to speak into the answers that he had. Once the wear and tear started coming on, and I don't know where it came from. So wherever it came from, it was kind of stealth for me. But he just really started to stay stuck on the migrants that are coming to our country. Every answer, every problem that we had, I felt like he was telling us that the problem are the migrants, the migrants, the migrants. And so I felt like he really, really, really got stuck there, and he just couldn't get himself out of it. And then even when he started to give the non-answers, it was even more obvious because he would go straight to that. So I felt like he really lost his way, and he just went into a rabbit hole, maybe in his head, and he just got lost there. And as he was doing that, I felt like Tim Walz was staying consistent. And then he started to find his voice and his prowess and his charm and like the charismatic ways of being able to like say, gotcha, so that was what I felt like. So I think that ultimately it was a very slow game because, again, it's the JV squad. But ultimately, as this continued to unfold, I really do see that. I see that Tim Walz rose to the top and was the clear winner. It was kind of like in that last quarter, again, he was shooting shots and he was making them on the perimeter, and then he just spread that score. And I feel like he really, truly made a lasting impression in a lot of ways, because he even started turning to him and just asking him direct questions, and I don't think J.D. Vance was ready. So, yeah.
I'm wondering, Ayante, come on, I got to get, he's multitasking.
He's doing too much. He's
He's multitasking. I'm wondering if Ayante is still fired up and ready to go. He's 1,000% team Kamala.
Yeah.
I mean, we all are, but this is his first rodeo. This is his first rodeo, and he's really excited. Ayante, what are your assessments of tonight's debate?
Well, I would like to defend my record of making sure that we're cleaning the cultural center up, or we would be here until 11 o'clock at night. I know how this game goes.
Ayante.
So to ensure that America is cleaned up, we need to vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, and I think the governor made that case pretty clear tonight. I'll be the one who's most critical of the governor. I think that he had a very poor performance at the first half of this debate. I think he struggled. I think he was very nervous, and his nervousness showed. As somebody who uses a lot of fillers, and I think I just did one, the ums and the uhs, I don't think that's necessarily something that I would see or want to see during a vice presidential debate, especially when your presidential candidate has really set the bar on how to take down MAGA extremists. And so I think myself as a voter walking into this, I had the same expectations that how Kamala tackled Trump in the first 3 minutes of the debate. That's how I wanted J.D. Vance to come out and fully tackle him. Now, the tackle came later on in the debate, and I think that he cleaned up his stances later on certain issues. I think that there were several issues where of course, J.D. Vance, but even Governor Walz did not give an answer, and I was like, did we get an answer to that question or not?
Well, I'm clear he wasn't at Tiananmen Square.
Yes, I'm clear. Yes, he was not there.
Once a direct question is asked and it keeps going on, and you wasn't there.
Yeah, he said that directly.
But then he did say I did misspoke at the end of the.
When they circled back. Yeah,
he did say he misspoke. I do think that overall that Tim Walz won the debate. more specifically, I think the last few zingers that were there, asking J.D. Vance directly, did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election? And J.D. Vance chose not to answer that. If J.D. Vance won, J.D. Vance probably could have won some very key swing voters if he would have just said Donald Trump lost. And he would have pissed off Donald Trump, and he would have pissed off the MAGA base. But we know that the MAGA base is not going to go vote for Kamala Harris.
No, you actually are saying you would have liked the vice presidential candidate as selected by Trump to stand there and say, the one I'm running on his ticket actually lost. That's what you was expecting.
I was, because the entire debate he tried to make a pitch to moderate America.
The great Leanne Wheeler, you got this look about yourself.
Real quick, J.D. Vance made a case time and time again that he was the small town American kid that understands what everyday Americans are going through. And so in that moment, to be politically strategic as you're trying to win these key swing voters, knowing a lot of swing voters don't trust Donald Trump mainly because of January 6th, is he would have been able to win some of them over by acknowledging Donald Trump lost the election. MAGA wasn't going to go nowhere. He would have had one day of a flare-up with the campaign. Donald Trump would have maybe set off a tweet or two, but he wasn't really, that wouldn't have turned off their base, and it would have gained some moderate voters that are undecided about this election to say, if J.D. Vance recognizes it, then we will have somebody who will have a steady hand on Donald Trump's very fragile hand.
The great Leanne Wheeler, I want to get your thoughts on the debate tonight. And before I go to you, I just want to say to the young bull, had I selected a vice presidential candidate and you got on the national stage and said I lost, I'd fire your ass the first thing as soon at the commercial break. I'd have replaced him at the commercial break. They'd been like, "Where'd the dude go?" They'd be like, "I don't know where that cat went." The great Leanne Wheeler.
Debate this chair. Because that dude is out. There's a bar stool here. Debate that.
The great Leanne Wheeler, what are your thoughts on the debate tonight?
I tell you, I am. This is a show that triggers people because you have entered a three-thing zone. This debate was tighter than I expected it to be. What I'll say is this, and this is how things occur for me. So this is the position I'm in. I've been listening to it in the car on the way over and all. So I didn't miss a drop. I consumed every crumb. In agreement that the governor got off to a rough start. I don't know that I concur with a sentiment around someone who governs a state being nervous at a debate. This ain't school student council. This is second in command for these United States. And so clearly he was nervous. I'm sure he had his reasons for that, but it was, I think, off-putting. At least for me it was. I'm not changing my vote based on it because I can't do a treasonous traitor, draft dodging son of a bitch. But
that's like the bad bitch built body of Marjorie Taylor Greene that Leanne just gave us a new acronym. Leanne, will you just run that acronym back for the t-shirts?
I don't know what I said. Oh my word. But what I'll say is this debate was tighter than I would have hoped. J.D. Vance showed up to do exactly what he was supposed to do, and that was to keep the heat off of his primary running mate, to deflect, to lie, to suck up, to all of those things. There was nothing in his head that said, I'm here tonight to convince swing voters to my candidate, to my primary candidate. He was there to cast doubt, to undermine, to throw shade and Freuden on the Madam Vice President, on our Madam Vice President. And I think he did a very efficient job of that. I don't know how effective that will be, however. He had a roadmap and he stuck to it. And so with that, he outperformed this governor in the debate. What I'll say is this: the governor I think he was on in character on his profile. This is not a guy that has a slate of thoughts necessarily that he's memorized by rote. He responded in the moment. And what I'll say is that, I believe, will be more appreciated than the way J.D. Vance presented tonight. So there he is, a guy that cares. That came across all night, even to the point of, I am nervous because I know how important this is. I get that. So on that, on humanity, on being right, on telling the truth, and on the two things that I loved that he talked about, he came back to it on a circle back, was January 6th. So what are you saying? Well, let me just ask you. Wait a minute. Like it just occurred to him. Let me just ask you. Did Trump lose the election?
I'm focused on the future.
And that was his response both times he was challenged on January 6th. And so I think it was said earlier, I don't know if it was you, sis, or someone else, folks are in their buckets. I don't believe there's a movable middle here. I don't think the vice presidential debate is going to answer to a movable middle. You are in the camp you're in. Mm-hmm. And so the opportunity now is for both campaigns to get their sound bites out of the night. Right now, we should be seeing some things with regard to what was said and what wasn't said, what was lied about outright. The question that I love from the moderators, and then I'll take my seat, was the go back on federal lands. When they started having the conversation about federal lands, we all know what that meant. Mm-hmm. He was in office saying that we should be drilling on federal lands. Mm-hmm. He was in office saying that we should vacate indigenous peoples from those lands in order to do it. Mm-hmm. And so what was new was now we're also going to build houses. Mm-hmm. And so I want to finish on one point, and then I'll take my seat. This is a long-winded answer.
Come on, Pastor.
So what I'll say is this, and I've said it before. When you buy a home anywhere in this country, in your closing documents, there is a disclosure as to whether or not minerals exist under your property. Mm-hmm. It is also very clear in your mortgage documents, in your closing documents, that you don't own them. And that at some point, the owner of those rights may decide to exercise their rights. So in layman's terms, drill, baby, drill. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so as the conversation came up, and I think there's an opportunity to educate around this long past this election. So when the topic came up initially under the Trump administration about drilling on federal lands, and here's the other second part that we also don't talk about with regard to extraction. What we have under our earth, we have to send somewhere else to be refined. Mm. Rewind. What we find under our earth, we have to send somewhere else to refine. So discussions around drilling as a matter of national defense, drilling as a matter of cleaning up the environment because we're not having to, ship it or whatever his lies were. The simple truth of the matter is, what we extract, to include what gets extracted here in Colorado, is sent somewhere else to be refined because of the nature of the mineral. We don't have the ability to do that. Now, we might have maybe we got one little rig somewhere. But to think about what is under these homes and Oakwood homes and all these other homes, we don't refine that locally. We send it, guess where? So now you're talking about also building homes on this federal land. After the cat's out the bag, we know we've got natural, right? We've got minerals under those federal lands. And so now you're saying build housing there? And what, put the poor's there? So here's what's happened over the years. we used to have a housing inventory that looked like people stepped up into, and I know I said I'd take my seat, but we had a housing inventory that people could step up into. 1-bedroom condominium. Maybe you get married. Maybe you get a 2-bedroom condominium or a larger condominium. And then you might move to a townhome, say. Or if you're an unmarried woman, no kids or whatever, maybe your first jump is into a townhome because you need a second room for your little stuff. But there was always an inventory. And then the speculators took over. And it was touched on briefly tonight. But then the speculators take over. And we've had that happen here in Colorado. I've sat in on those meetings. They are disgusting. And so what they say is, here's what we think. Here's where we think we can build. And we just got to get, this is my term, get a hook in the mouth of the right person in planning and zoning at whichever city council meeting. And maybe some of them are even invited to those meetings. And maybe some of them on the inside track help them navigate those processes. So they can, in fact, speculate, have the number, drive these things up. And I think what wasn't known by those who control those decisions was just how wildly depleted the inventory would become, supply and demand, and how outrageously high housing ultimately would go. And so the answer, I'm going to tell you who thought of it, the speculators. The answer was to create a renter's economy on these lands that were fleeced out from under folks who would otherwise own that land. So it is that group that will be now, because the jig is up, it is that group of folks who now live where it ought to be an EPA superfund. Well, we built apartments on the flight line that used to be Lowry Air Force Base. Apartments, not $1 million homes, although they're in proximity. And my expectation would be that is what happens. If federal lands are seized, then it will be renters that will be placed on that land to deal with the consequences, or don't have a voice in when the owner gets to decide to extract. And so with that, I'll take my seat.
You know,
said a lot of things.
No, there's a lot that opened up in this debate, and one of the things that I'm often observing at debates, particularly at the presidential level, is during the debate, particularly, with the two-party system, those who are debating on separate, on the same party, they all tell their truth while trying to be the president. But once they're not, they stop telling the truth and they get behind whomever is the nominee. So you can learn a lot at the debates in terms of the nuances.
True.
Because they're willing to tell their secrets about the other person, where they're getting money, how they're spending money, what their process is, and all that. And so listening to this debate, I've got two things that I want to share. First of all, from the obvious, the political standpoint, both of those candidates did well in just holding their position.
Yeah.
True.
It wasn't a fight.
No.
It was not. It was not a slugfest.
Right.
That you got perhaps with Kamala and Trump. The tone was different. It really was a debate. It was not like I'm out to get your jugular. It was two white guys in a privileged position being two white guys.
Yeah, doing
that's all it was.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Exactly.
How are you doing? I'm doing well. I agree with you, but I would like to add to this. I do. Oh, I'm sorry to hear about you. You mean your 17-year-old saw a murder? I'm very
thank you.
Christ,
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Christ
Yes.
save us all.
Yes.
It was very. Are these cousins?
I think that you want to resolve it, and I think I do too.
Yeah,
We both do.
Medine, great point.
Yeah.
But I'm different than you.
Right. And it's a little troubling, but
great point, but
let
it's
me
not a
explain.
great point.
Yeah. I'm just a little troubled.
Great point, but
Yeah.
I want the job.
Yeah.
So
I think I'll be a little better. Yeah.
So in terms of the performance, you heard the Democratic Party talking points, and you heard the far MAGA talking points. You didn't get the center. You got here's where we're at on the women's issue. I think that what was very interesting about this conversation are two things. First, they opened up with the recent attack as reported on Israel from Iran.
Yeah.
Now, you didn't have enough time to study all of that because there's, boom, this just happened. What are you thinking? And I think that that's where you saw the nervousness of a Tim Walz, because he probably didn't know the policy position on that and can't speak out of turn in terms of your thoughts on a preemptive strike.
Yes.
It's like,
yes,
man,
that
that's
was
not
clear.
my pay grade right there, and y'all coming out the gate with that.
Yeah, that was clear.
We didn't coach on that. I don't really know the position on it, and that's so that question was I don't.
Yeah,
it was a hard one coming out, whereas Vance was able to say, well, straight up. It ain't my country, so whatever they decide to do, that's what they got to do. That ain't even my decision, but we gonna support it.
Yeah. So neither one answered the question.
No, but Walz was clearly not prepared for that question because it wasn't in the folder.
To be fair, yes. That's
true.
And it was the first question.
Yeah, and I think also a little bit to the nervousness. I think that the format of this debate is different than any of the other debates that Walz has been in and JD Vance has been in. Like, there's no audience. You can't consult with your crew like in between. And there's no notes, like preemptive notes that you can bring in. So I don't know if I don't think that that's common. I think that they've shifted some of these rules to the more modern day debates.
I think they were responding to the Kamala had an earpiece on and her earring.
Well, they were going to say that regardless. They would have been in her press.
Like, you can't bring in props. Like, what was you going to bring in, that sign?
Right.
Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. But I think that was just a different format than other debates that I think both of them have ever been in. And so I think also there is some pressure. I mean, we can all agree that there is some pressure, but the pressure comes with the job. So you do have to be able to lean into that. And then the question, the framing of the first question, and he had to go first, right?
He went first, and it was a tough question.
So there wasn't a lot of runway for him in that regard. He probably prepped like in the green room or on the way.
But if I asked you, Medine, do you think that we should do a preemptive strike on Iran? You're like,
yeah, I'm not political. I'm like, hell no.
I ain't talked to the generals.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just.
If you're asking me in the moment, hell no, because I don't have enough information.
What I think that Walz did great was represent Kamala. And I think that Vance represented himself.
Oh,
he had to.
He was trying to look presidential.
He had to.
Where Walz was looking vice presidential.
Yeah. Vance's candidate is 79.
Yeah,
so
but
I need to look presidential.
Vance came out trying to look presidential.
Yeah.
You notice he didn't, in some of his, in particular in his closing remarks, he was telling you what he thinks. I think this, I believe this. It ain't what you believe. It's what Trump believes.
You're second chair.
You're the second. You're riding second chair.
Right.
Yeah.
And throughout that debate, I could see that Walz was clear he's riding second chair.
Yeah, because he asked for the vote for Harris and Walz.
Yeah, he's speaking on behalf of Kamala Harris and what she will do and what she has been doing, as opposed to what he thinks. He did big up Minnesota a lot, to where I'm like, I want to move there.
Well, yeah, but he was able to lean into his own experience, which I thought was really dope. He was able to speak, like, just so you know, because he was ready for healthcare. He was like, I hope we get to talk about healthcare later. So he was ready for the healthcare conversation because of the things that he's done. He was ready for the conversation around, because even when he talked about, I'm a gun owner, so is Kamala. But she had asked him, why did you shift your policy in the assault weapons ban? And he said, because I sat in the room with Sandy Hook parents. That to me is adaptive leadership, and it's beautiful.
That's the human moment that the great Leanne Wheeler was talking about. And shines.
And he said, I had a picture of my 7-year-old on my wall, and their 7-year-old was dead. Like, those are the things I think that resonate. Even if you can't remember or repeat it, there's just something about that resonates with people. I think Tim Walz did a really good job of like being the human factor in the room. I think JD Vance was a lot of plastic. A lot of him was plastic. Even when he was giving condolence, he said something like "Christ save us all" or something. I don't know. It just
Christ save us all.
Yeah, like it was just something that came. It was very
Accepting
forefatherish.
immigrants.
Right, but he wasn't saying immigrants.
I know he was saying
said
aliens.
illegal aliens, and that he kept saying that, and nobody challenged it. That got under my skin because there's an opportunity to slow down and say, "Stop. We're not going to call people aliens. That's not what we do." But
you know what's interesting to me that I wanted to follow up in terms of the nuances of the discussion tonight was the utilization of federal lands, because all that reeked of was white wealth giving free land to go west, and as much as you can take, you can have.
Colonizer 101.
That's how you can get it. Yeah. Like, this is federal, but I'm going to give it to you. This is the classic privatization conversation of public lands, whether it's public education, whether it's the privatization of the prisons. It's all like, yeah, we own it, but if I give it to you, you'll do better with it. But I want to ask you all, in terms of my understanding of the stock market and all that comes from Trading Places. Did y'all see that movie?
Yeah, I love that movie. Hey, Auntie, do you know what we're talking about? Trading Places?
Trading Places. And they were talking about commodities trading.
Probably older than you.
Now,
yeah, that's for you elders.
But remember, there was this conversation about housing, and then it goes into what the great Leanne Wheeler was touching on, where speculators got control of the housing, and now housing is a commodity. Yep. I'm like,
and through the roof.
How that was a teaching point right there. The great Leanne Wheeler, housing as a commodity as opposed to what it used to be. Because he said what it used to be. It used to be where you came home and had Thanksgiving dinner.
And juxtaposition between, listen, the whole idea around camping bans and the whole idea around moving the poors out, these things go together. The big fight around housing as a right, it didn't get legs yet, but it kind of starts every now and then, fits and starts. Like, housing isn't a right. Why? It used to be that people
I just want to have Thanksgiving dinner.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, it was part of the American dream, right? Mm-hmm. And so you can have a conversation about redlining, and I've said this more than once. My family was first black family on the block. It didn't go over so well in 1970, but we were still able. My parents, blue collar folks, were still able to afford a home for purchase. I have that home right now. That is in it. I inherited that house, and so. And oh, by the way, the Wheelers are the only original people on that block.
Yeah.
And so you're seeing it here, you're seeing it everywhere. So yeah, speculators have commoditized. In fact, we have commoditized everything. You used to be able to be born for free and die for free.
Well,
your family had a responsibility to see about both. Somebody was bringing food, somebody was bringing the blankets. All of that was happening within a community, within a family, and then we slapped a price tag on being born.
Now,
and then we slapped a price tag on dying. And so what we've done now is bridged in the middle. All of the things that are lined out in this U.S. Constitution, theoretically, around the pursuit of happiness, our liberty and our pursuit of happiness, all of that from cradle to grave is starting to close in and be commoditized.
Well,
all of it. All of it.
Hey, Auntie, I want to ask you, because there was something I was looking for in terms of this debate, and I think that, Walz did great. He was like, this is what we've handled immigration, or we've handled that in Minnesota, and so has Kamala in California. Mm-hmm.
Border. She's a border state.
Attorney General. She was...
Well, a whole state.
She was constantly put in the discussion when he was answering questions. Yeah. Hey, Auntie, what I was waiting to hear, and I'm pleased it didn't happen, was a conversation about Aurora, Colorado. Like, we finally are not a part of the conversation following a national debate. There's no need for anybody to come to Colorado. Aren't you pleased that
Danielle,
none of that, like, we didn't get thrown in this fight?
Danielle.
You must have missed Dr. Phil today.
No, I'm talking about the debate.
It came on at 8.
This debate. The one that came on at 7 o'clock our time.
I'm just saying that folks must have missed Dr. Phil because Aurora was still on the national stage this evening with lies being spread. And so I think J.D. Vance, and he did not say they're eating the dogs and eating the cats. He knew how to stay away from that and threw a temper tantrum when the moderator said, we just want to make sure that people know Haitians are not, the Haitians that are in Springfield, Ohio are here legally. And he threw a temper tantrum of, oh, you're going to fact check me? So since we agreed to not fact checking, and they had a whole temper tantrum about.
They fact checked him though.
About them telling the truth.
I don't think they fact checked him. I think they just said a statement that was more critical thinking.
They fact checked him.
I don't think it was, because a fact check would have been him saying that Haitians were here illegally, and then they're saying, no, Senator, they're here legally.
They fact checked him.
No, they just use critical thinking.
Anytime the moderators get in and do a follow up and say, no, that's not actually true, and this is how that is, you can't get on him for saying you all agree.
Is your friend.
No, I'm just talking about on tonight's debate. The moderators did fact check Vance.
No, they didn't.
Well,
that wasn't a fact
check.
check.
And he said the rules were we weren't going to do fact checking, but since you are, let's do this.
That wasn't a fact check. A fact check would have been him giving a misleading statement and then the moderators following up saying that's actually not true. That he did not say. And I don't recall him saying the Haitian migrants are here illegally and they're eating the dogs and cats. Then the moderator would have said, actually, the Haitian migrants are here legally. That's a call to fact check. He did his little stint about immigration and Kamala Harris giving the keys to the country to illegal immigrants. And the individual made a statement saying that Haitian migrants are here legally.
And if he would have let in saying, hey, everybody, happy Wednesday. And they said, actually, it's Tuesday.
That's a fact check.
That's a fact check. I think that's just critical thinking. Today's Tuesday.
That's a fact check.
No.
Why are we agreeing not to fact check at all? Why are we this country now? I'm serious.
Lazy.
So now part of the rules making and campaigns is you can't
tell everybody if I'm lying.
You can't embarrass me in front of America.
What in the hell are we even doing with that? I was astonished to hear it. So, simple truth of the matter is, there's a lot of nuance as to what is and what isn't fact checking. What I liked in their approach, frankly, and it probably straddled the fence between checking and critical thinking, is that once the question was answered and concluded, they came into the space with the fact.
And they also did a better job of saying, are you going to answer the question? Because there were multiple times where, because in the other debates that we saw, I don't know which one it was, I didn't see that challenge, but they would say the actual question was, and then they would repeat the question, giving them an opportunity to respond. So I liked that because that was kind of an insinuation that, hey, America, they're dodging, right? So I really appreciated that piece where they were like, that ain't what we asked you.
What did you think about this dodge when they asked Vance? It was like, well, remember when you said that he was Trump was unfit and he was actually like Hitler?
Can we talk about that, please?
Like,
can we talk about
he said and then it was like, and then you went back and said his economic plan was kind of trash. Like, but let's get with this Hitler and this unfit thing. And he was like, man, I was buying the lies like y'all was.
I was drinking the Kool-Aid.
What did you think of that, Medina? Like, how did he clean up that poo-poo?
I don't think that you can, but I think he danced around it a lot. He just spread it out so you couldn't tell which part is poop and which part is the dirt. He just spread it all around. Like, well, because he also said, I'll admit that we did some things wrong during that era. I was surprised that he said that. And I think in that same space, possibly, he also, twice he did it. He said that at the end, he said, no matter if you vote for me or Walz, like, I'm happy you're here, or I'll pray for you, or prayers and thoughts or whatever. And then he also said, if Tim wins, I'll, be praying for him and I'll be helpful. And I'm like, well, there we go.
Did he clean it up? Hitler and unfit and economy, like this dude's trash, but now, he's kind of cool.
I tell you what he did. And there were at least one other instance where I think he was making an attempt to fall on a sword of sorts. And so, yes, I said those things, But, you know, I kind of bought into what the media was saying. That happened, but
the media made me think that way.
But I soon figured out the wisdom. He used wisdom to describe treason. Trump, excuse me. Well, I call him treason, but he used the word wisdom as an adjective, and he did it more than once. And so we've got this new term now in our language, sane wash. Have you heard that?
Huh?
Where you've got a candidate that is completely unhinged running for the president of the United States of America. He is insane. And so now there is this sane wash that happens on the crazy things that he says. Now, when Senator Vance was running for, and you know, I am from Columbus, Ohio. I was in Ohio when he was running for the U.S. Senate. He knew that the temperature in Ohio at that time was anti-Trump. It was a very narrow sliver of time, and that's when he stepped into it and said the things that he said. He was running for U.S. Senate. He had to say that.
Gotcha.
He had to also distance himself from the Ohio governor who had shut down. He was the first governor in the country to do a stay-at-home order, a Republican. So he also had to distance himself from the governor of Ohio, whom the president had just threw under the bus. Oh my gosh, this guy is the worst governor in the world. So he was able to straddle this line. It was pretty strategic and almost like a surgical cut that he was able to navigate to win the U.S. Senate in Ohio. I don't think he was expecting to be asked about it ever again, because he was fully expecting to ride some wave that looked like Trump was in charge of it. He handled that masterfully. So it's like, look, you said these things. So that dude, so what's that little Matrix movie? I like how you put it with the spray. You smear the poo-poo over the mud.
They don't know what's
they're indiscriminate. Can't tell which is which.
Yeah.
This guy, so he managed that strategically and brilliantly. I thought, well, he did that. I got off of that. Listen, I fell for it too.
Well, like y'all did.
He's wise. So go back and count the number of times this VP candidate called Donald Trump wise, with all evidence to the contrary.
Right.
Well,
that's sane washing. That's saying the mess you saw was actually brilliant, and anything that you felt negative about it was actually the fault of the media.
Right.
Well, were you?
It was brilliant.
Were you impressed, Deontay, with the fact that that Vance said? And by the way, I was raised by Democrats, and Robert Kennedy supports me.
Bobby Kennedy. He said Bobby Kennedy.
He was talking about the one that just. Which one is the guy?
Robert.
Robert,
but he said Bobby.
Exactly.
Let me tell you why. Because Bobby Kennedy was beloved.
We like Bobby.
Bobby was
Robert.
He was assassinated.
Get your ass down.
But he was beloved.
What did he say about that? Because he did bring the Robert's the one that's in the mix right now.
He said Bobby, and it was intentional because it invoked some things, in particular in the Midwest. So that was intentional. I know you were talking to Deontay, but when he said that, I thought, now that was really smart. Because Robert Kennedy is around there fishing for, I don't know, a cabinet position or something. But Robert Kennedy Jr., he's never gone by the moniker Bobby.
That was his RFK
daddy.
Now. Yeah.
That was his dad.
Right.
But to invoke that in the same sentiment as I was raised by two Democrats was intentional for that region, to be sure. And so I was actually thought of, again, I can't stand that ticket. I will not be voting for that ticket. I'll have to go back and get my acronym on the replay. I don't remember what I said about it. But here's what I know, is that most of what that man said was designed to pivot off of what we all know is true about Donald John Trump. I'm bugged by the fact that no one mentioned the felony counts. No one mentioned any of those. And so that all clearly got negotiated away as part of what the campaigns would agree to for tonight's debate. Why not bring it up? And so if you're having the conversation, and what Walz was talking about was body autonomy, like men have, to make decisions about what happens with their bodies. We don't force vasectomies. He didn't say it, but we don't. So that's where he was taking it. And Vance was kind of trying to live into what Trump said around how my life gets easier as a woman if he's the president. There are things I just won't have to worry about.
What did you hear, Ayante? I'm raised by the Democrats. I'm raised by Democrats, and then he mentioned a couple of Democrats.
Leanne answered the question, I think, pretty solidly for both of us.
Yeah. Well, that's beautiful.
It didn't resonate with me.
It didn't. How did it resonate with you?
It didn't.
I was like.
It didn't. I was like, whatever. Move on.
I'm like, ain't that Kennedy you talking about? Didn't he just run off and endorse Trump?
Right. So you could try to get a position or whatever. I think for me, Robert F. Kennedy is he's an irrelevant factor for me. But I know that, in a tight race, that's something that could very well be potentially threatening. But I don't think that J.D. Vance got any kind of whoop or accolade from that movable middle that they're looking for. Robert F. Kennedy ain't gonna get you.
I didn't see that middle moving in this debate.
Well, I think there's just something there's something to be said about the resonating factors of some of the things that Tim Walz did. Like, there was just some jabs. He's just a nice guy, right? I'm just a nice guy. But he was stabbing a little bit. And that part, I think, is something that does resonate. I think that personally, if you had to find like which campaign is a little more worried than the other, I think the Trump campaign was hopeful that they would have seen a bigger lift, and they didn't, because Tim Walz was stabbing. He was like popping them balloons like really, really slick. Like when he said, there was a moment where he said, VP Harris doesn't do that, Congress does. And he's pointing to a senator like but Congress does that.
Let me ask before we wrap this up. And again, we're just unpacking the vice presidential.
Yeah, the JV game.
The JV game.
Come on.
Like,
that's brutal.
I have never seen a vice president positioned in a debate as if she was the president. You know what I mean? Like, Kamala Harris is the vice president. But the debate from this other side positions her as if she is the president.
Yeah.
And so, for example, Kamala let in all the fentanyl.
Right. It's her.
Like, Kamala let in all the fentanyl, and 1 million illegals have committed crimes here.
Yeah.
That should be fact-checked, Ayante.
Well, they weren't fact checking.
I mean, it's true. I just want them to name me 3 laws Mike Pence passed as vice president. We are holding Kamala Harris to the standard as if she is President Harris, and if it is baffling to me. I think that there were some missed opportunities on Walz's part, because Walz should have just hit J.D. Vance. Is like, where were you? How was your vote when it came down to the Inflation Reduction Act? How was your vote on the bipartisan infrastructure bill? How was your vote on X, Y, and Z to keep the American people on the notice of when Kamala Harris is breaking tie-breaking votes, she's having to do so because that man's voting no every time to when it comes to the important things about you. When it comes to the bipartisan border security bill, how did you vote, J.D. Vance, to secure the border? Since this is a topic that you want to talk about.
I wish you would have did that.
And so I think that's where the missed opportunities were on the Walz campaign, is that is a sitting United States senator. We're not talking about former Senator J.D. Vance. We're talking about current Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, and talking about his legislative record. And making it very clear that, and I think Kamala made it clear that she's not Joe Biden, and I think Tim Walz kind of missed that opportunity to say, she's not president, and you know this, that she's not president. And I would have turned to him and said what I started off with: name me 3 laws that Mike Pence passed as vice president.
I think it was real interesting because our friend, his name is Robert, the Teamster.
Yeah, Robert Houston. My guy.
It was interesting because he was sitting here earlier, and he was talking about his support for Kamala Harris, and he says, I'm 50 years as a Teamster. 50 years. He says, it may not be as impactful in this part of the country, but the pensions of union workers was about to go away. It was so bad that all the union pensions was underwater. And he said, and then it went to the Senate, and it was a 50-50 vote. It was a tie. And he said the one who cast the deciding vote was the vice president that saved the pensions of the union workers, and her name is Kamala Harris.
Yep.
I'm like, now that's a message that should resonate, you know, and should be amplified. And sometimes, you know, that's not said, because that is the part of the country that's going to determine who's going to be your next president.
That's real. That's real.
The Rust Belt, the Iron Wall, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
Steel country.
Steel country, worker country.
Yeah.
You know, because that's what they're all talking about.
Debate.
If you notice, they keep talking about who's taking your jobs. They're shooting at that wall, them workers, you know, and then trying to say that we're the friends of working people. But with that being said, as we get out of here, what is your final?
I want to go back on that statement,
please,
because here's who's not getting thrown under the damn bus are the people who are hiring them. So if that is the problem, if that is the way this works, folks just show up here without their documentation
and they just take
go
a
to
job.
work somewhere.
Yeah.
Who the hell hired them?
That's true.
And we have managed not to say that. And I don't get where this mindset is, because I'm hearing it amongst black people. This is what's happening. They're taking our job. Wait a minute, who the hell's hiring them?
Right.
Where is the culpability there?
Yeah.
If in fact it's happening. It's not, but if in fact it is. And what we're not talking about are necessarily jobs at Google or Apple or whatever. What they've said is, we have set apart some jobs for the poors and the blacks.
What impact is the immigrants having on housing costs?
Well, we're supposed to get a report online. He's going to send us a report on Facebook.
What did he say?
He said,
who is selling houses?
He said after the debate, we'll post that online.
If there's a real problem
here. Did he
here,
say Facebook? I think
you're pointing at, because that's what has worked since the advent of this country. But who's leasing up to them? Yeah. Who's allowing them to work? Who's selling them cars?
Yeah. If that's really the issue.
Throwing a rock and hard in their hand. I said, so I just thought, wow, we're not even talking about that aspect of it. We're just villainizing these folks
who are trying to make a living.
Let me just say this, and then I'll take my seat. The majority of theft that's happening at retail is the employees who work for those companies. And those companies have a full risk mitigation department, a loss department, with an expectation that some of this stuff's going to walk out of here by the people who work here. Aurora right now, of course, is writing laws, has written laws to say anybody that takes off with they didn't get support from retail on any of those ordinances. They just decided that's what they were going to do. So, and if you didn't know, word on the street is J.D. Vance arrives in Colorado on the 8th of October. They just don't know where yet. So we don't know.
Douglas County. Bet.
Okay, you got dibs on Douglas? I'm thinking El Paso or Larimer.
I was gonna say probably Weld and Douglas.
Yeah. So whatever along the corridor. Yeah. So
he needs to win that congressional seat up north.
True.
But he also needs to focus on Aurora.
Yeah. So he can be over here still slinging the stuff.
Oh yeah, he'll talk about Aurora and Venezuelans out in Douglas County.
I mean, he's absolutely very close, very, very close.
And he'll do it in the Aurora part of Douglas County.
And we'll be there to cover it.
Super
All right
excited.
now.
We must.
All right now. All right
We
now.
must.
So anyway.
I know it's going to be hard, Medea, to hang out in this rally, but
Oh my God.
we're going in. We're going in. We went into the Republican chambers and saw that
Of Danielle
Senate hearing and
It was,
whatever
Brother
it was.
Jeff, that's one thing to go into a little private meeting with Lauren Boebert, and it's another to go into an actual MAGA rally. But if we doing it, I'm gonna at least I think we should go as Black Trump supporters.
Well, you're the person I tell people to call if I get arrested.
I
so
think
if
we
you
got
arrest
you.
me-
I think we wear the hats, we get some shirts,
I'm never putting on no
I
MAGA
don't know how
gear.
that happened.
and we
Hell
just
no.
I'll put on that red hat that says "Made You Look."
right.
I have
I'll do
one of
something
those.
like
I'll
that.
wear my Kamala hat.
Oh, Lord.
I am not. I would not wear Kamala gear to the
I would not either.
MAGA rally.
Thank you.
I would.
And it is true
Yeah,
that
bellows.
there are a lot of people that are afraid to just put a yard sign in front of their yard.
That
Like
was
now, that is
extraordinary to
like
hear.
people just are afraid to just put up a yard sign. Have the political climate become that dangerous to where folks think their house might be firebombed if they put in a particular like Kamala sign in front of their house? Did that catch your attention?
It did. I was astonished when she said that. And it's curious. Because if you've got folks who are working in the party leadership that are feeling that way, I mean, I don't know what to say about it. It is extraordinary to think about. And so listen, America was founded on bombing things and murdering others. And so, I mean, it's not too far off I mean, it's not, I would expect it, I suppose. I'm expecting violence anyway, just around this election, just because this is what we saw 4 years ago was violence. And now they've had 4 years to have an after-action review and figure out how to do it a lot better than they did it in the first place. We took too long to prosecute. Let me just say this. We took too long, this is a show that triggers people, to prosecute the actions of the players on January 6th. Now, you know, there's some folks that got 22 years or whatever, 1 or 2, but they weren't in the building by themselves.
Right.
And to be able to go from being horrified to have a Mark Meadows say, call your people off, and have that be on a recording. I mean, just all of the things.
And that was in the debate tonight. What do you think about that January 6th discussion in the
I'm forward
debate?
looking. I'm looking toward the future. But, you know, that was what he was supposed to do. He did his job. That dude did his job. Whatever his little money's going to be. But if they don't win this seat, there's no way that guy shakes Tim's hand and says, good luck. No way that happens. Here's what they're going to call into question, and then I'll take my seat. Until Madam Vice President Harris, and I want us all
Amen.
to put some respect on her name. I get that it's kitschy to call her Kamala. That is the Vice President of the United States. She still, as the Vice President of the United States, has to run that process for election. And what they are doing is undermining her credibility and everything else. So when it comes time for her to do her job, they can attack her like they attacked Mike Pence. That is coming. That's what this is shaping up to be.
Wow.
Well.
And so be ready
That's
for
deep.
that. It's the truth.
Ayante, final words and takeaways from tonight's vice presidential debate. What's your walk away? What's your takeaway? Where do we go from here?
I appreciated that he snuck in the line about Mike Pence. He said, and this is why Mike Pence ain't up here right now. I think that needs to sit in with every voter is why do we need to have a new audition for a vice presidential candidate? Mike Pence was why did Mike Pence not want the job? And I think that is telling. I think that it's telling that when you look at majority, at least 60, maybe 70% or more of Trump's former cabinet, ask them why they don't want their jobs back. Why aren't any of them campaigning for Donald Trump? Why isn't Nikki Haley, who was arguing about him being elected president at the RNC. Why isn't she stumping for her voters across the country and stumping to try to get swing voters across? Because
now, didn't she prep him for his debate? I'm trying to figure out what happened with that.
No, that was Tulsi Gabbard.
Okay,
but that should show that Donald Trump is doesn't care about you, and also that anybody that he hires, anything that the man touches, it just turns to shit. And so I think that we have a very clear choice this election. We're 35 days away, and I'm actually surprised that we're talking about an election that is within 1 point. That is ridiculous. We're talking about an individual who has spent 34 years in public office one way or another, and she has dedicated her life to the American people. Probably one of the only presidents that has spent her time at local, state, and federal government, has one of the most qualifying resumes of all time, and she's going up against a 34 convicted count felon who was liable for sexual abuse, who tried to overthrow the government, who as of this week suggested the way that America gets crime down is by having essentially the purge. This is an individual who we're talking about putting in the highest office of the land, where world leaders don't respect him, where he, don't hit that button just yet, where he has made a mockery of this country, and we're talking about this election being close. And so my ask for anybody who's a swing voter out there, I need you to vote, because it's about the courts. It's not just about who's going to be the president. It's about who's going to be on the Supreme Court. Donald Trump has said, I will put a 30-year-old on the Supreme Court, so they're there for 50 to 60 years. When we vote this election, it is about ensuring that Roe v. Wade, if there happens to be an opportunity to make this the law of the land, that is the law of the land. And when we vote this election, it is about the future of this country. I don't want to have to be running for president in 20 years talking about Donald Trump. I just simply don't. I'd rather have my campaign focused on the future.
The great Leanne Wheeler, your final thoughts on tonight's VP debate. Takeaways, where do we go from here?
Both of them did their job. They did their jobs respectively well. I'm going to give J.D. Vance the plus up on how well he did what he had to do to sane wash the most outrageous, insane candidate we've ever had run for the president of the United States. He did that. He did what he had to do. The choice is clear as far as I am concerned. There's no way that we need to let this happen. Even if VP Harris wins this race, there will be violence. Even if. And so I need for us as a society and voting people and people who care to understand that voting is the first part. We still have to get through January 6th of 2025. Constitutionally, that's the date that the electorate's, all of that gets formalized on the 6th of January. We have to get through that. Then we have to get through our inauguration and then her 4 years. So I don't want, there are judges in place that he put in place. There are changes to the laws on the electoral process in states, in particular where things were a little too close for comfort. All of that stuff's going to be at play here. And so the debate went the way I expected the debate to go. They each did their job. If I had to pick a winner, they were a statistical tie, just like we are with the POTUS situation. It was a statistical tie for different reasons. But we got to understand that it's not just this election, that there will be things that happen on the other side of the election, and it depends on who wins as to how fast that happens. Project 2025 is a real thing. Some of those tenets are already underway. If Trump gets back in, it's not going to be a cakewalk. We're all in danger. If you are black, brown, poor, white, you're in danger. Period.
Wow.
If VP Harris wins, we're all in danger, because there's a cadre of folks who have decided that cannot stand. They showed up on January 6th of 21. They'll show up on January 6th of 2025 with a better plan. And so this is all well and good, and the parts are the parts, but there are things that we all should be thinking about and preparing for, no matter who, and here's the other piece, and in so saying, civil war, this is not a race war, this is a gender war and a class war that they are trying to make a race war. You have said, I don't have autonomy over my own body. How dare you? We are half the sky. We are half of this country. Women are half of the country. And you are saying through law that I don't have a dead body, a cadaver, has more autonomy than I do over my own body. That is where we are headed. That is the problem. And so we have got to and I'll tell you, he expertly skirted around that. Expertly skirted around. What Walz did brilliantly was to say, this is all about a woman's choice. Between she and her health care provider, whatever they do for her health care is their business. And so the women who voted for this president, the demographic of women who voted for Donald Trump in 2016 and voted for him in greater numbers after COVID in 2020, y'all better do the right fucking thing in 24. Hand to God. You better do the right fucking thing this time. Wow. Because what you think this is, it ain't that. You don't get endeared to patriarchy because you go along with surrendering your autonomy over your own body and your own choices. You can do that if you want to, but you can't blanket do that for the rest of us. If you have a sentiment about what this ought to look, and I'm saying that as an old lady, I'm not having any babies. I'll be 57 years old. What I'm saying is, what else? What else about my existence in this country are you looking to take back if I can't say what goes on with my own body? What else are you looking to take away? There's a reason why there's not wage equity in this country. There's a reason why. There's a reason why child care is through the roof. The expectation is they thought that would drive women back home to raise their own children. That's what they thought it would do. And we're still treating child care providers like mammies on a plantation. They're not making a living wage. We pay them as little as we can pay them. So we have got to come to a place where we get up here and take a look at all of the things that have been unfolding and happening since Ronald Reagan took office in 1980. That's what we have got to get back to looking at, because this has been a long game. Where we are right now it's not an accident. It just isn't. It is not. If you can keep a society addicted, if you can keep a society distracted, if you can keep a society struggling to make ends meet, you can in fact rule them. And this is a president that said that is his intention, is to rule us. Now, I don't think he gets to stay president if he wins there's a reason why Vance showed up today presidential. Because should this happen, I'll bet you a box of donuts that should they win, should that ticket win, we will see the emollient clause. We will see the 25th Amendment, and that guy will be out on his ass and Vance will be the president. That's the play. And so we have got to, and there are those, I don't begrudge anybody whatever vote. I'm not going to tell you how to vote. What I'm going to say is this. Voting third party in 2024, depending upon who you are, this is a show that triggers people, the black folks ain't swinging this thing. It's going to be the white women. It's going to be the white men. Where we come in as a swing is when it gets really, really close. And so the black men who have threatened not to vote for her for whatever reasons, there aren't enough of you to swing an election. So my hope would be your mamas and your aunties and your wives and your girlfriends and whomever else do the right thing even if you don't. Even if you don't. Now, I'm a huge proponent. We're going to talk about 131 sometime in the next week or two. I'm a huge proponent of more choices. I'm a huge proponent of all of that. This ain't the year for that. It isn't. And you have never heard me say that before. This is not the year for that. Do it if you want to, but this isn't the year for that. Because there's more at stake. I need all of us to come up to a place where it's all cute. These shirts are fabulous. It comes down to this. I have lost my body autonomy. Women have lost their body autonomy under this administration. We had Supreme Court justices that sat during their hearings and lied to the faces of those who would appoint them, and there were no repercussions for that.
Wow.
So anyway, I'm complete with that mostly. I'll take my seat.
Powerful evening. We just finished as a community watching the VP debate. Median, your final words and thoughts and takeaways on tonight's VP debate.
I don't think that either camp walked away disappointed. I agree that both camps feel like their avatar, did a good job. And I think that if you're in a certain camp, you saw some specific things that made you feel like, oh, my person won, and that's not what it is. I think that both camps walked away saying, okay, at least you held the line. I think for me, with that being said, I go back to the person that's on the top of the ticket. And one of the things that I appreciated is that Amber Thurman's name was invoked tonight. She's the beautiful black young woman who died because she was trying to get health care and had to cross states, and she died. And the last thing that she had to tell her mother, and it might have been the other young black woman, but one of these young black women had to tell their mother, please take care of my son. And so a mother had to bury her child, and that's unnatural. And we're in a time, I feel like we are in a time where we numb ourselves to other circumstances if it's not in our doorstep. If it's not in our door frame, it's hypothetical. It's just a story. And a lot of us have lost the capability of being able to see ourselves in those that are impacted by the things that are happening around us. I'll bring in the name Marcellus Williams as well. This is a black man that even the prosecutors that prosecuted this man said, please don't do this. Yet we had a judgeship, a Supreme Court, and the United States Supreme Court uphold his execution, even when the people that prosecuted said, don't do this. All of that is something that we have to grapple with. And when it comes down to stuff like that, this is not about picking a side. This is not about saying who's black and who's not. This is not about saying, well, so-and-so should have had a no. These are people's lives that are gone. And we have to get back to a time where we can see ourselves in their eyes. Marcellus Williams had a 14-year-old daughter. How does she look at this world now and say that there's hope or there's opportunity? I think that's what's at stake. It's not about agreeing on every policy. It's not about trying to invoke some type of intellectual clout in a conversation. These are real ass choices that we have to make. And truth be told, Donald Trump is someone that has invoked both of those situations with Amber Thurman, with the other beautiful black woman who died from abortion care, and with Marcellus Williams. He invoked that because we have someone running for president who also refuses and probably doesn't have the capability of seeing himself in someone that looks like me or looks like a lot of the people I love. So tonight, I think, sure, we had a VP debate, but as we move forward and 35 days later, we have a result, my hope and my prayer is that inside of that booth or on that tablet or wherever it is that you're casting your vote, start seeing the people that are impacted by these real choices. Start seeing yourself or your daughter or your granddaughter or someone you love in their eyes, because those people are gone.
Well, powerful, powerful evening vice presidential debate. I think I will just close by saying there's two things they always want to take from you: your gun and your vote.
Yeah. Because they know those matter.
Travel anywhere and they're after two things from you: your gun and your vote. And so that being said, a powerful vice presidential debate. I want to thank everybody who's paying attention. And I'm hoping that in your circle you can attract individuals who are not paying attention and then get them involved, because this system is designed to make folks become apathetic and not go the extra mile to do things that would change their lives or impact their lives. And that is protect themselves and vote for who's governing them. And so with that being said, you heard a lot about the Affordable Care Act. You know, there's no country sicker than America. So I can only imagine you do need some affordable prescriptions.
Yeah.
There are things that are very important that, you know, we should be really paying attention to. I liked hearing Tim Walz talk about stop scapegoating mental health.
Oh, yes, that was brilliant.
That was a powerful moment.
That was.
And, you know, every problem they want to blame it on, you know, immigration, and they want to blame it on mental health. And tonight, I think that Tim Walz clearly said, you know what, sometimes it's the guns.
Sometimes it's the guns. That's
and I'm like, duh.
That was brilliant.
Like, duh. You know, it was a civil debate. I think that both sides will have their clips for propaganda, but today you better look a little deeper than that propaganda and see exactly what's being said, and more importantly, what's not being said. And there was a lot of, we're talking about the future as a way of not talking about
what happened yesterday.
This morning.
And sadly, you know, in civil debates where there's this kind of civility about it, folks don't just call it what it is. You got to figure out what they're saying.
Right.
And one of the things that I could see clearly that Tim Walz was saying was clearly this: Donald Trump chose a vice president that had a sense of morality and duty.
The first time.
And when it was time for him to do the wrong thing, he did the right thing, like all these other governors did,
right?
And all of these judges did. And to Trump's disappointment, the pick he chose did not go along with his particular narrative, which was, you know, we're gonna do whatever needs to be done, you know. But I think what Walz was saying is, but this time he's picked a person that will absolutely do what he wants him to do.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's what you better be paying attention to. You know, Walz was representing Kamala Harris, and Vance was doing everything he could do to look presidential.
He better.
And you better think about that.
Because that's the vote that you're casting.
We'll stay on it. Thank you, everybody who came out. A great turnout. It just shows that when folks say people are not engaged, actually people are very engaged.
I agree.
And they are.
Even if they're undecided, they're engaged.
So go to brotherjeff.com, make a donation of any amount. Thank you to all of our patrons and those who use the great Leanne Wheeler's favorite option. It's Cash App, $JEFFFARD. And now we've got, I think it's called Venmo.
Venmo.
I don't even know how you get to
Brother
it.
Jeff.
It's just at Brother Jeff.
At Brother
If you
Y'all
do,
set 'em
like,
up with Venmo.
at Brother Jeff.
At
like,
Brother Jeff. I'm
so
talking,
they-
I'm donating at you.
get at me.
You say, don't at me.
With that,
Say at me.
with that, the ballots are coming. But I did hear that voting is already happening in certain places.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought I heard some of that. And
Yeah,
so
there's ballots out already. Ours come out on the 11th.
there's some stuff happening right now. So
Woo.
don't forget, if you're not into politics, politics is deep into you.
Even if you don't want it to
And,
be.
you know, if you don't show up, don't worry about it. They want your gun and your vote.
Yeah.
And so think about that.
Mm-hmm.
If you go down,
Go down swinging. You just might score a knockout. Rumble, young man, woman, and community. Rumble.